this week you have the story of the woman who is bleeding, and so you'll see the difference where we have blood, bleeding, same concept, but I should say different concept, but the signs are the same. So red blood, and you have bleeding. So it all depends upon what you're using it. The only time you would have a difference is if you're showing it. So the woman, she was bleeding, or Jesus, he was bleeding. So the crucifixion, you can show your bleeding and show it facially. So, I cut myself and I'm bleeding, or I cut myself and I'm bleeding. So you can show that where it is. So blood and bleeding. Bleeding you can show in different places. Next, this is a good time to practice, because it says she went to doctors, and she many times. And so you can put in there the time. So remember, day goes down like this. The weeks go across. Months go down like this. And years go around. So practice that. 1 day, 2 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, 1 year, 2 years. And then you have past and future. So the past is behind you, the future is ahead of you, and right now is now. So last year, 2 years ago, next year, 2 years, last week, next week, or next week. So put up that spatial for time. Next, we talked about this before, but this is a good emphasis. Her bleeding never stopped. That's a negative. You could also say her bleeding continued and continued and continued. For us, for signing right now, we did never stop. But as you go on, as you practice more, you're going to want to change the negatives to become a positive. So instead of saying never stop, it continued going. Now is a good time also, because we have doctors. Sometimes you do doctors, but often it's doctors because they're feeling the pulse. So doctors, nurses, and that's why I often do the D, so you can easier see doctor, nurses, but you'll see both. Then you have hospital. And so think about those different signs. So like ambulance is pretty easy, like ambulance. So when you go to the doctors, you go to the hospital, you go to the doctor's office, I have to go for testing, or I have to go for, and we could do CAT scan, you have to go for a CAT scan. So think of all of those hospital things, or I have to get a shot, and so I have to get a shot. So those ideas, think of that when you see an ambulance or see a hospital, what signs are involved with that? Then the same thing, I was talking just about healed and well. Same sign, Jesus healed the woman. She is now well. Same concept, it just depends upon your sentence and the context that you're using that. So heal, well. Again, it's that verb, and one is an action, one's finished. Spatial. So showing movement. So we've often talked about, she came up to Jesus, but now if you're approaching front on, or you are walking away, you're walking away, or now you can show where she came up from behind. So think about that, if you're coming up to behind somebody, or if you're coming up to meet somebody, or if you're coming up to meet a bunch of people, or you're coming up this way. Think of how that, and so we met, we talked, and then we left. Or we met, we talked, and he left. So think about that as you watch the movement of people around you. How would you set that up to show that with your hands? So your hands become your classifiers to show this movement. Then we come. This again is context. All, full, whole, and so you have to see that. I want to know, it would be the whole, all the story. And so this whole, God made him whole. He healed him. And so you have to think of how this concept. So God made that woman whole. He healed her. It doesn't whole. It's not full. So you got to think of how you would use those words in the sentences and see how the right sign matches with that concept. So all meaning all things, full or full meaning it includes things, and whole or whole as in healed. Last one. Talk about suffering. You'll see that sign suffering, but you also see sad or suffering. They're in pain, and that again really includes if you're in pain or you're in pain. If you're suffering or you're suffering, or I'm sad or I'm sad, and so you got to see how your expressions match, and you don't go, oh yeah, I was very sad. No, that's a conflict. So watch how you do the emphasis and show on your body the varying degrees of how you would sign that. All right, so have fun, enjoy making the pictures with your hands and conveying those concepts. All right, blessings.